Now we can take a look at other things going on within her chart. In part one, we already spoke about the moon representing her universally. We're not going to do that again. But now we can take a look at this moon as representing her money, because the moon is the ruler of her second house. So the moon in the fourth house could say that a lot of her money is coming to her generationally, or from real estate, it's coming from working from home, or it's coming from her family. She could come from a family that is supportive of her own interests and desires. Now she has that moon in a square relationship with Neptune, and that can indicate that for all of the money that she's having, there is still the seed of losing it all, because that's what Neptune manifests as. And there's nothing worse than losing it all when Neptune is afflicting something that's fixed. If the Neptune is afflicting something that is cardinal, we expect for that thing to be in a state of fluctuation. When the Neptune is afflicting something that is mutable, we expect for that thing to be in a state of fluctuation. When the Neptune is afflicting something that's fixed, as is her moon, the specific significatrix of her money within her birth chart, that just hits a chord within us. I keep on coming up to the word existential. And I think existential is a word that a lot of us are going to need to come to terms with, because we are in a period of Saturn-Neptune. So whatever I'm saying about Ghislaine Maxwell's chart is something that we're all going to have to come to terms with, because we're all going to be Maxwelled within this coming period of Saturn-Neptune. It's fascinating that the people who manifest this more than anything else are the people who are in the news. Jeffrey Epstein with his natal Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Libra, and Ghislaine Maxwell with her Moon-Neptune story and the way how that's manifesting in such an obvious way. So when you have a fixed planet afflicted by Neptune, the loss of the things that that planet represents, it hurts even deeper. Because why the hell are you fixed if you're going to fade away from my life? So the person goes broke, they go broke gloriously, because the Neptune erodes away at everything they have in a way that there's no coming back from. And so she has this moon in the square relationship with Neptune, which is very challenging for her from a financial perspective, and there's probably no coming back from that within this lifetime, or it probably will leave such an impact on her personal wealth that she's going to feel it for the rest of her life. Now we're going to move on from this financial situation. Some people like to talk about the part of fortune. I don't like to talk about no part of fortune. I feel as if the part of fortune is a waste of time in most astrology. And the only type of astrology in which the part of fortune truly kind of makes sense is Uranian astrology. I don't want to open up that kettle of worms. But she has the part of fortune at 20 degrees Capricorn, 36 minutes. The part of fortune is in conjunction with Saturn, or rather Saturn is in conjunction with the part of fortune. So I will take my conservative astrology opinion and extend the orb to include this part of fortune as being under Saturn's influence, because that is probably one of the least strange things that happens in astrology in the year 2026. So she has Saturn in conjunction with the part of fortune, which could be indicating similarly that she lives based on the sweat of her brow, but it could be saying that essential part of her love and desire within this lifetime is to work hard. Part of what's turning her on in this lifetime is the idea that she can be responsible for something much greater than herself. Because whenever the part of fortune is in a conjunction with a planet or in any other way afflicted by a planet, that planet manifests as a source of what brings that person joy. Part of what really brings her joy is knowing that she is Saturn. She is the gatekeeper. She is the queen pin. She is responsible for everything that's occurring within her world. Next, she has the moon as the ruler of her third house. The third house is the house of siblings. Having the moon as the ruler of the third house of siblings could be an indication that this native had a sibling that took up a lot of space within the family home. Whenever we have the rule of the third house in the fourth house, that can be an indication that my sibling took up a lot of space within my family home, to the point of me not even being able to find my own space in the family home because my sibling's story was so overwhelming. We see that she has Cancer on the third house cusp, and we see that the moon is a feminine planet. Maybe that's an indication that this sibling was a sister. I don't know. I don't know anything about her life. And I actually don't even practice astrology like that. But if I did practice astrology like that, I would probably say that the native has a sister, and the sister is taking up a lot of space within the family home in general, or probably the native has extended family in the form of cousins, female cousins, who are probably living with the native and taking up a lot of space in the home as well. So that's another thing that we see as a result of the moon being within the fourth house. Now, we also see that this moon is afflicted by the Neptune, and that could indicate to us that the sibling or the cousin or the whoever was probably sick or unwell, and probably that's why this person is taking up so much space within the family home as a result of being sick or unwell or needing to be attended to. And when you're in a world like that, it kind of feels like, yes, I am being forced to grow up faster than I needed to grow up, because why am I in this house changing the diapers of my 20-year-old female cousin? Basically could have been one of the questions that she could have had. I don't know if any of this is true. All of this is purely conjecture, but those are some of the ways I would interpret the moon in the fourth house with the moon ruling the third house. One of the things that we just saw in the chat box, and this is coming from what I assume is a news article. This says that in terms of her sibling story, Maxwell was born 2 days before a car accident that left her 15-year-old brother Mychal in a prolonged coma until he died in 1967. So there we have it, this idea that having the moon representing the sibling. I've said this many times before, that when we have the ruler of our sibling in the fourth house, the sibling is taking up too much space. And I jokingly said earlier that she might have to be changing the diaper of her chronically ill female cousin, but it carries the same tone that when the ruler of the third house is in the fourth house, my sibling is taking up so much space. And why is my sibling taking up so much space? Because my sibling is sick, which we see via the moon in a square relationship with the Neptune. We've also found the north node within the fourth house, and that doesn't really mean anything to me at all. But what is significant is that the south node is in the 10th house. And we know that according to the ancients, whenever we have the south node in any house, that house is cursed. Now, we can't say that in the year 2026 or else we'll get cancelled expeditiously. So we're not going to say that anybody is cursed, but we will say that the house in which you find your south node could represent one of the greatest areas of challenge within your life within this lifetime. And so for her career life, her career reputation could be a place that is one of her greatest sources of karmic learning and challenge within this lifetime, and probably just her reputation in general, because, you know, our children's children are going to know Ghislaine Maxwell. And maybe with the passing of time, we're going to stop talking about the boogeyman, and we're going to start calling the boogeyman Ghislaine, and without remembering why we actually made that shift. Anyway, so that is the south node in the 10th house. Now, since we're talking about the fourth house, we need to talk about the family. The father within this chart is specifically ruled by the sun, which is good for us because we know that the fourth house is the house of the father. It's nice when we also have the planet that rules the father universally, ruling our father specifically. It gives us less work to do. Why is the fourth house the house of the father? We know that that's the case because Saturn in the Chaldean order is corresponding with the physical realities of our physical body in the first house. Jupiter in the Chaldean order is corresponding with the wealth that we receive from our mother's breast milk in the second house. Mars within the Chaldean order is corresponding with our siblings and our blood relatives within the third house. And the sun within the Chaldean order is corresponding with our father within the fourth house. That is why the fourth house is the house of the father. It's not the house of our parents in general. It is the house of our father specifically. So we have the father represented by this sun. We've already spoken about her father within the previous broadcast, and we see that the father is in a conjunction with the Mars, which is saying to us that her father may have been a very militant, commanding, and demanding person in her life. We see that the sun is standing with Mars by declination and with Venus by declination. Her father may have been a very charming person, but he was a mental warfare tactician, because that's what it means when we have a Sun-Mars person within our lives. He knows how to play the game and he knows how to win. And that could have been who she saw representing masculinity within her life. And therefore, that could have been who she wanted as a husband. Somebody who knew how to play the game and somebody who knew how to win. The last thing afflicting this fourth house, and by extension the 10th house, is she has Neptune in a square relationship with her MCIC axis. Within Uranian astrology, the midheaven is representing the closest part of the human soul that we can touch or tap into or identify. Because when a person has Neptune afflicting their MCIC axis, it oftentimes manifests as that person being the embodiment of Neptune themselves. We've already spoken about this in the previous reading, so it's confirming for us to see the ways in which everything that we mentioned in the previous reading is showing up when we look at this chart through a traditional astrological lens. So she is Neptune. She has the very central pillar around which her life constellates, i.e. the MCIC axis, being eroded constantly by the forces of Neptune within this lifetime. This woman doesn't believe in anything, because I wouldn't believe in God if everything I try to build keeps on eroding in my life. One of the things that tells us that she believes in no God is the fact that she has Saturn in Capricorn in the 9th house, and also the fact that she has an earth sign on the 9th house cusp. These are two of the things that the ancients say will lead a person to being an atheist. Jeffrey Epstein also has Saturn in the 9th house. Let's see what his chart is looking like. He has Libra on the 9th house cusp, but he has Saturn there. And once again, this is representing a person who knows no God. Their God is money. Their God is the material plane. Their God is everything they can see and touch and feel, because if I can't see it, touch it, or feel it, it isn't real. Neptune afflicting everything. Neptune is afflicting the ascendant by the quincunx. Neptune is afflicting the IC and the MC by a square. What is there left to believe in, ultimately, is the question. So these are the things that we see as far as the familial story is concerned. Hey there everyone, Mychal Bryan here from the Oraculos School of Astrology, and before we dive into today's program, I just want to say a major thank you to all of you who've been supporting my work by purchasing my books, Mastering Traditional Astrology, Horary Astrology and the Natal Promise, and the New Western Medical Astrology. Thank you all so much for supporting the work that we do over here and for supporting me as a self-published author. And if you haven't already purchased my books, please make sure to go over on Amazon and grab yourself copies today so that you can dive into this wonderful world of magical astrology that I've curated for you within these 3 books. And if you've already purchased copies of these books, then please make sure to leave us a review over on Amazon, because that is how Amazon supports me as a self-published author. Once again, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart, and do enjoy today's program. From the perspective of her mother, we can take the moon as being the universal significator of her mother. From that perspective, she has moon Neptune. Her mother wasn't released. Her mother was a disappointment. Her mother was somebody who, even if she wanted to be a mother, she couldn't be a mother because she just didn't have the tools, the skills, or the abilities to show up in the maternal way for the native. As a result, she may have felt deeply unmothered, which may have tied into her own sense of disillusionment regarding what it is to be alive or what it is to be held or nurtured by anybody. From a specific perspective, Saturn is the specific significator of her mother. This Saturn is at 28 degrees Capricorn, 57 minutes in the 9th house. That could say that her mother may have represented somebody who was very far away. Maybe her mother traveled a lot. Maybe her mother was inaccessible. Maybe she lived far from her mother. Could be an extension of what all of these things are indicating. As we move on to the 5th house of children, to see what type of mother is this lady likely to make in this lifetime. We see that she has Uranus present within the 5th house of children, and she has Pluto present within the 5th house of children. Both planets often indicate a person who may not feel as if they're cut out for the role of motherhood within this lifetime. Seeing both together in the 5th house of children could very well be an indication that this woman went to great lengths to ensure that she would never become a mother within this lifetime, because the thought of her becoming a mother and passing on to her own children whatever she got or didn't get from her own mother may have been too much to bear. Therefore, she may have gone to great lengths to make sure that motherhood was not in the cards for her. And so that's what we see about motherhood. And what do we see about children for her? When she looks in her chart at the thought of children, she sees those babies in the 8th house. And those babies in the 8th house could mean that she either had children who died, and as a result of her having children who died, which could very well be a possibility, because she also has those children in the conjunction with Mars. We see Mars at 0 degrees Capricorn, 38 minutes. Mars is ruling the 12th house. The 12th house is the house of the death of one's children, because the 12th house is 8 houses away from the 5th house. And so those children are in conjunction with that Mars, representing the death or the trauma associated with some life or death occurrence with the children. And we also have those children in this 8th house of death. A further indication that the crossover between death, her children, and her mind is a very real thing going on within her. That connection, the relationship of those three things, her physical body, her children, and the forces of death, are coalescing in the same part of her chart. So probably she had deep fears about becoming a mother because maybe she got pregnant once and that was a very traumatic issue for her. Maybe because those children died and she didn't actually want those babies to die. And as a result of that, that traumatized her so much that she became whatever she became. And she also did not want to have children anymore as a result of that. So that's what we see with the ruler of the 5th house present here within the 8th house. Now that we move on from this, we see that she has the ruler of the 6th house located in the 7th house. And the 7th house is the house of our marital affairs and relationships within this lifetime. Ruler of the 6th house in the 7th house says that my partner knows that he's a problem. I know that he's a problem because he's wearing all of his problems on his sleeve. So we're saying that that's his problems because the Venus is the ruler of my partner's 12th house for us. It's the house of my partner's self-undoing. So that Venus is ruling my partner's 12th house, representing his own self-undoing. And the ruler of his own self-undoing is in his own 1st house, saying that he knows what the problems about him are, but he's tapping into them regardless. He's living through them regardless. He is the physical embodiment of them regardless, and he doesn't even care. He doesn't even care because as he sees those problems, he sees himself. And why would he change them if he knows that that's who he is? Now, we might say, this woman is stupid. She's Neptunian. She's not thinking clearly. She has no sense of anything. But she's not so stupid because within her chart, the ruler of the 12th house, which is representing her hidden enemies and her self-undoing, is also present within that 7th house, which means he knows he's a problem in my life. I know that he's a problem within my life. He reminds me of my daddy and I'm going to stay. Because of the parents in my life, my mother was the wackadoodle who was completely sick or deranged, unable to hold a salient thought. And my father was angular and strong and Martian and virile and masculine. I just like calling my biological dad daddy. And here I am with a man who is giving me the ability to do that same thing. It's crazy what people do when they find themselves in a situation, and I've been guilty of this as well, this whole piece of clinging on to a person or investing something into a person because I feel like that person represents this idea or this concept for me, even though I know that person is a problem, even though everything within me is saying, Mychal, run for the hills, there's a thing, and I don't even know where it comes from. It's a very 12th housey sort of thing. But she saw that he was a problem. He knew that he was a problem. Everybody knew that he was a problem, and she still held on to him regardless, which is nuts. It is absolute nuts. Because even if we did not take this 6th house as being his derived 12th house, let's push house derivation aside and say that we did not take the 6th house as being his derived 12th house. It is still her 6th house, which is the house of stress, and sickness. And where does she have the ruler of stress and sickness? In the 7th house of the relationship. Barring house derivation, pushing derived houses aside, the ruler of that 12th house is still there in that 7th house, which is a strange place to be because not only is he manifesting as my stresses, but he's also manifesting as the source of my silent suffering, probably the source of the death of my children. She probably got pregnant for him. And that's a part of the story that they're trauma bonded. And probably, very much likely, my hidden enemy within this lifetime, which I said from the previous chart, because remember in the previous chart reading for Ghislaine, I said that this man probably didn't even like her, truthfully, but he probably held on to her because sometimes you hold on to people who you don't like because they represent something in your life that feels stable, especially if I'm a Neptunian person and I realize that, oh my God, everything that manifests within my life just fades away. But the only thing that isn't fading away is this one person who I hate with all my guts. But look, she is still here no matter what I say to her, no matter what I do to her. She is still here and she's not leaving me alone. I might as well stick with her, even though the very sight of her repulses me. Could be the sort of situation that we find going on here within this chart. Who is he? One of the things, I've had a long career. I'm happy about it. I'm also happy to be moving out of it. But one of the things that I find always problematic within the charts of my female clients is when they put that man at the top of their chart. And yes, I say when they put that man at the top of the chart, because you definitely chose when you reincarnated, and you definitely reincarnated with that man as your guiding light within this lifetime. Why do I say the man is the guiding light for this person in this lifetime? Because that man, that Jupiter is the ruler of the 7th house of the man. And when you have that man at the top of your chart, women, what even is that? Like, who does that to themselves? Why is that man conjunct your midheaven? Why is that man your sense of direction? Why is that man at the top of your chart? And I love it so much to the point where I can't even stand it anymore, because in Jeffrey Epstein's chart, as God is my witness, Jeffrey Epstein, we've already identified that he himself is Neptunian as a result of him being Saturn conjunct Neptune in his own birth chart. In her chart, he is manifesting as ruler of the 7th house, i.e. her husband, in a square relationship with Neptune. So exactly who he was, right down to this description of him as being a Neptunian person. In his own chart, we see those same things manifesting in her own chart. He is Sun Mars. He is Sun Venus. He is husband afflicted by Neptune. Women, if you have that man in your 10th house, kick him out. He doesn't belong there. What that means is that the two of them can work together, and she might meet him on the job. And we also see that he is the ruler of the 11th house. He might be a friend who becomes somebody who she works with, who becomes a lover. This could be the trajectory of that relationship. And he represents the beginning and the end of everything she knows about herself, which is crazy. That is crazy work in 2026 under this current administration to do that about anybody. Now she's in a situation where her name is inseparable from his. Those two names just go together like white on rice. It's bonkers, honestly, because she doesn't really have any sense of identity. She doesn't have a sense of who she is as a woman, independent of who she is with him. Women, no one is worth that. Men, I don't know your struggles as intimately because men aren't as forthcoming with women. Let that man go, essentially, because you don't want to end up like Ghislaine. Now, another thing is that when a woman has Neptune in the 6th house, remembering that that 6th house is the 12th house of that man, that oftentimes can indicate that that man has an addiction that overwhelms his entire relationship to life and reality. And that would be the case just by having the Neptune in the 6th house. It's even more so corroborated as being the case because the ruler of the 6th house is Venus in the 7th house, which says to me that my husband or my boyfriend's addictions are something that are emblazoned upon his chest for all the world to see. She is having the ruler of the 7th house representing Jeffrey Epstein himself in a square relationship with that Neptune, an indication that my boyfriend's addictions tucked behind the curtains of his 12th house are still coming up to devour my boyfriend and drag him right back down to hell. Who knows? Maybe this man wanted to give up children for Lent. Part of what he was deciding to give up in Lent 2019, the year that he allegedly died. But he just couldn't let it go, because there was something about that made him feel good. I wonder what his whole relationship to children is. I just want to see, where's these children in this chart? He has the children as being the Venus in this chart. He also has the Algol. Algol is setting on the cusp of his 5th house, and I think that is quite significant, because what does that say to us about him and the story of children? It says to us that the topic of children is something that he's likely going to lose his mind over. He has the children conjunct Mars, and we don't like to put our children in harm's way like that. Maybe that's a problem. He has the Mercury Pluto over here by declination. We know that Mercury, from a Uranian perspective, is the universal significator of children, and Pluto is the god of trauma. This could be a story of him holding traumatized children within his own clutches. It could also represent traumas from his own childhood that he learned to block out of his consciousness as an adult. But he couldn't have blocked them out that far, because he still grew up to be traumatized. We have addendum from Vivian, who says that regarding her fertility, at one point she and Epstein were planning fertility treatments together. So who knows whether or not they were planning fertility treatments together. They probably did have some sort of secret child that we don't know about. Or maybe those fertility treatments were actually successful, and the two of them did actually have a child who passed away, and that became a part of her own maternal wounding story within this lifetime. We will never know, but we do see this story of children and trauma, and her being the mother of children who could potentially be traumatized within this chart. And this, people, for me, is where I think we should end our look at the chart of this lady, because I think that what we see within her chart are all of the pieces that manifest as supporting the things that we know about her. And we also see elements that support things that we probably didn't even know about her, by virtue of our ability to look at this chart from the perspective of these houses, which is a perspective that is afforded us by traditional astrology. Thank you all for joining and being a part of this presentation. I'm happy that you're here and that this is something that is interesting to you. The next step will be for us to take a look at her chart through the lens of Uranian astrology. So please make sure to stay tuned to the Oraculos podcast. Please subscribe to the Oraculos podcast wherever you find us on the internet. And definitely, if you're watching us on YouTube, please hit the notification bell so that you can receive notifications of when we come out with these episodes. We are coming out with episodes faster than you could even say the word episode. So please make sure to subscribe to the Oraculos podcast everywhere, so that you can keep your finger on the pulse of all that we have going on over here in our Oraculos universe. Hey there, everyone. If you love the sort of astrology that you see here on the Oraculos podcast and you want to practice astrology in this same way, right now you can purchase our medical astrology preliminary and advanced courses from oraculosastrology.com so that you can practice astrology like an Oraculos trained astrologer. In these courses, I teach you everything that I know about medical astrology so that you can begin practicing not only medical astrology, but also so that you can take your first steps in practicing natal astrology just as if you were trained directly by me. So if this is something that you want to do and you're looking to amplify your astrological tools and skills and practice astrology in a more concrete event-based way, then by all means check out oraculosastrology.com and purchase yourself lifetime access to our medical astrology preliminary and advanced courses today.